Greetings, free thinkers. Welcome to the Hoggcast. How are you doing today? I hope you're doing fine. I certainly am. Okay, what do we have for you on today's episode? We have for you the concerning video of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who has said that CRT, critical race theory, is not only necessary, but it's important. You know that there is a justified, in my opinion, backlash against CRT being taught in schools. The perennially stupid mainstream media, those at CNN for example, are even trying to tell us that CRT isn't even real. So whilst the chairman of the Joint Chiefs is telling you that it is not only real, but it's important, whilst we have footage of teachers actually from the Zoom calls over the Rona period in which children were taught over Zoom classes, not only do we have video of the teachers, quote unquote, indoctrinating the children with CRT, but then we have the mainstream media telling us that it doesn't actually exist. A bit like the Democrat representative, I forgot his name, the very small, very old man, Jerry Nadler, that's it, Jerry Nadler, who told us that Antifa doesn't exist. I'm sure you remember that one. He was caught out literally with his pants down and he said that Antifa doesn't exist, when of course it does. They, even now at this late hour for Western civilization, they are trying to tell you that your eyes and ears are lying and that you should trust them and only them. Okay, so look, let's get into this clip of the Joint Chiefs, the chairman of which is telling you that the poisonous shit that is CRT is not only necessary but important for your children. So we'll get into that now. If you haven't yet though, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and most importantly share this video around. We are shadow banned, demonetized and reduced. We are conservative commentators, and as such we are not welcome on this amazing platform. Let's go. Okay, so we will listen to what the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff has to say, then we'll go back after we've watched the clip and we'll start it again, and I will stop it intermittently when there are important things, important points I feel I need to make.
Sure. First of all, on the issue of critical race theory, etc., I'll obviously have to get much smarter on whatever the theory is. But I do think it's important, actually, for those of us in uniform to be open-minded and be widely read. And the United States Military Academy is a university, and it is important that we train and we understand, and I want to understand white rage, and I'm white, and I want to understand it. So what is it that caused thousands of people to assault this building and try to overturn the Constitution of the United States of America? What caused that? I want to find that out. I want to maintain an open mind here, and I do want to analyze it. It's important that we understand that, because our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians, they come from the American people. So it is important that the leaders, now and in the future, do understand it. I've read Mao Zedong. I've read Karl Marx. I've read Lenin. That doesn't make me a communist. So what is wrong with understanding, having some situational understanding about the country for which we are here to defend? And I personally find it offensive that we are accusing the United States military, our general officers, our commissioned, non-commissioned officers, of being, quote, woke or something else because we're studying some theories that are out there. That was started at Harvard Law School years ago, and it proposed that there were laws in the United States, antebellum laws prior to the Civil War, that led to a power differential with African Americans that were 3/4 of a human being when this country was formed. And then we had a Civil War and Emancipation Proclamation to change it. And we brought it up to the Civil Rights Act in 1964. It took another 100 years to change that. So look it, I do want to know. And I respect your service, and you and I are both Green Berets, but I want to know. And it matters to our military and the discipline and cohesion of this military. And
You won't have discipline and cohesion if the way you're going. We're going to go back. I will make the points. That's the end of the clip. I will make some very important points that I feel I need to make. One quick correction to what he said, though. He said, or he seemed to say, that critical race theory, has its roots in Harvard. No, it does not. Critical race theory is an extension and has its roots of critical theory, which has its roots in the Frankfurt School of Critical Theory. So we'll go back now. We will play the clip again, and I will stop it intermittently to make the points I feel I need to make.
Whatever the theory is. But I do think it's important, actually, for those of us in uniform to be open-minded and be widely read. And the United States Military Academy is a university.
So when he says it is important and he says to be open-minded, what he actually means is to be closed-minded. It's okay for him to push CRT, but if you were to espouse your support for Donald Trump, you wouldn't be welcome. You're not allowed to be that open-minded. You're allowed to be open-minded so long as you follow the doctrine. So you are allowed to look in any direction so long as it's left.
And it is important that we train and we understand. And I want to understand white rage, and I'm white.
He wants to understand white rage, and he's white. Doesn't exist. It does not exist. To speak out against poisonous, divisive ideology apparently is white rage. You are expected to comply, and only comply. That's it. You notice that even the usual suspects and their corrupt organisations have now subtly changed the language, because you know they're masters of semantics. The left always have been. They subtly changed the word equality to equity, and now they've subtly changed the word or the phrase white ally to accomplice. You're no longer an ally to BLM and the likes, you are now an accomplice, which is a very apt word, really. If you think about it, it's apt for what they're doing and what their intentions really are. This is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. This is a military purge. This guy, whilst China is building a super powerful military, they have close ties with Russia. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is trying to discover and understand his white rage.
And I want to understand it. So what is it that caused thousands of people to assault this building and try to overturn the Constitution of the United States of America? What?
They didn't do that. He's referring to January the 6th. If that was a quote-unquote insurrection, it was the most pathetic and ineffectual insurrection in human history. No weapons were brought to the building. They were allowed into the front, I don't know if it's a front door, but one of the doors they were allowed into. They were escorted by the police, the Capitol building police. It was made up of people who were men, women, elderly people. If that was an insurrection, then that was the most pathetic insurrection, really. But of course it wasn't one. You know that, and I know that. You see, and I don't agree with what happened on January the 6th. If I could turn back time and get people not to do that, I would. Why? Because you gave the left everything they needed. That was everything they needed. They were pulling their own hair out after years of left-wing violence and riots in which entire city blocks, people's homes, businesses, livelihoods, local pharmacies, shops were burnt down to the ground by the usual suspects in the usual organisations who subscribe to the usual ideologies. The ideology this chairman of the Joint Chiefs is clearly subscribing to himself. So they needed something. They spent all their time, their allies in the mainstream media, accomplices, were working overtime trying to hide all of that from the public. And then January the 6th happens, and finally, after years, the mainstream media and the left-wing establishment had something that they could beat the conservative community over the head with. And that's why they talk about January the 6th every single day. You notice how when BLM do what they do to, and Antifa, do what they do to entire city blocks, you notice how not only do they not get arrested or if they do get arrested, the DA releases them without charge. You notice how, in response to that, they get money. But they get money thrown at them. Your money thrown at them. But whenever conservative people do something wrong, and it was wrong, what happened on January the 6th, you shouldn't have done it. They shouldn't have done it. But whenever a conservative group does something wrong, they don't get money thrown at them. They don't get understanding. They get thrown into solitary confinement. There are people there in solitary confinement being treated appallingly by the corrections officers, held in solitary confinement, some of them elderly men who lived their whole lives paying taxes, doing nothing wrong to anyone. And they're being held in solitary confinement.
Cause that. I want to find that out. I want to maintain an open mind here, and I do want to analyze it. It's important that we understand that, because our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians, they come from the American people. So it is important that the leaders, now and in the future, do understand it. I've read Mao Zedong. I've read Karl Marx.
We know you are quite clearly someone who is of a leftist disposition.
Lenin. That doesn't make me a communist.
No, to read a book doesn't. I haven't read those books. I've read Mein Kampf and some of the works. No, it doesn't. But your actions do. The language you use betrays where your loyalties really lie. To read a book, of course, doesn't make you something because the book is about something. But it does give you, or us, I should say, a glimpse into where your loyalties really lie. You've read books that are all about militant left-wingism, about communism, Marxism, and socialism. Okay, you haven't read Jordan Peterson's book, for example, or a book from any conservative.
So what is wrong with understanding, having some situational understanding about the country for which we are here to defend?
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with understanding it. But when you talk about psychobabble like white rage, that isn't just understanding. It's not about, if you want to understand something, get off the podium in your spare time, do what you said, read a book. But don't force your radical leftist agenda onto others. That isn't understanding something. When CRT gets pushed not only to our children in schools, but to young sailors, airmen and soldiers in military academies, that's not you understanding something, that's you pushing a radical agenda. They're two completely different things.
And I personally find it offensive that we are accusing the United States military, our general officers, our commissioned, non-commissioned officers.
So here comes the morally indignant part. A classic sign of the woke left.
Being, quote, woke or something else, because we're studying some theories that are out there. That was started at Harvard Law School years ago, and it proposed that there were laws in the United States, antebellum laws prior to the Civil War, that led to a power differential with African Americans that were 3/4 of a human being when this.
So you're living in the past again and again and again, but only selectively. You selectively choose which parts of the past you want to live in, because you want those of us in the present you have a gripe against to be held back. You want us to have no future because you want to live in the past. But worse than that, you want to live in a selectively hand-picked era of the past that you can use to push in the present today a radical agenda.
This country was formed. And then we had a Civil War and Emancipation Proclamation to change it. And we brought it up to the Civil Rights Act in 1964. It took another.
Yeah, and then Barack Obama got elected twice, something that could never happen if tens of millions of white voters did not vote for him, which they did twice. What more do you want? What more do you... What do you need? What do you need? You're talking about history, the Civil War and Jim Crow and this. And now you're talking about white rage. Look at the look on his face. If anyone is enraged, morally indignant, self-flagellating over this new religion that is the wokeism religion, that's it. Look at his face. So he's trying to project his own enraged state of mind, because we know that all leftists at heart are habitually angry about the real world that they live in, and they try and change it to fit some pseudo narrative that they're pushing. So if anyone is enraged, it's this guy here.
100 years to change that. So look it, I do want to know. And I respect your service, and you and I are both Green Berets, but I want to know. And it matters to our military and the discipline and cohesion of this military.
You want to know what? What is it you want to know? The CRT that you're pushing teaches that people based on immutable characteristics will always either be in the group of oppressors or the group of oppressed. Every time this poisonous nonsense has been allowed to grow in a society, it's nothing new, just like multiculturalism is nothing new. It's been tried going back thousands of years. Well into the Roman era, it was tried. And that was, in a large part, why the Western Roman Empire fell. Because of Visigoths and Vandals moving in. The word vandal, we use it to describe someone who just destroys something. Vandalism, a vandal. Do you know where that word comes from? It comes from the fall of the Western Roman Empire, in which Visigoths and a group of people known as Vandals, who were ostensibly allowed to settle inside Rome, decided to attack the capital and sack it when it was at its weakest moment. They destroyed everything, and in doing so, the name of their tribe, the Vandals, were immortalized in the now English word vandal, to vandalize, vandalism. Okay? When you become a society where the concept of one group of people is always oppressed and one group of people is always the oppressor, when you live in a society like that, it very quickly degenerates into, I'm afraid to say, genocide. The most recent example, you're probably thinking the Second World War. That is a recent example, but not the most. There's been others. Yugoslavia, for example. Rwanda, for example. Those are two, just two, since the end of the Second World War. But of course, the Second World War. Jews and non-Jews. Jews were seen as privileged. They were seen as people who had all the money and all the privilege. And look what happened. You want to know, you want to understand, then understand that. I've just gave you an education. I am your book, Mr. General Milley. I'm a book, and you've just read me. So now I hope you understand. Anyway, look, let me know what you guys think about the video. If you found it informative, leave a like in the comments. Leave a like to the video and let me know what you think in the comment section below. The clip's ended now, it's only got like 3 seconds left. Share this video around. We need to try and combat the crippling shadow bannings, censorship, demonetization that many conservative commentators, including myself, are currently facing. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.